Treatise. Composed by Cornelius Cardew, published in 1967, it is a monumental work of graphic notation and improvised music, comprising 193 pages of abstract lines and shapes. The score is only suggestive, with merely occasional glimpses or hints of the conventional way of score writing. It doesn't have a preface, unlike most other graphic notations, meaning it remains entirely indeterminate with which instruments it is to be performed, which pages, how it is to be read. The only premise then is to be open. Composer and musicologist Brian Dennis explains, quote, "Although it was intended for improvisation and realization, using as many or as few pages as required, and with no fixed rules of interpretation." Many years ago, my dear friend Jared introduced me to this piece. Thank you, Jared. I was struggling at the time, existentially, but also aesthetically. I struggled from insecurity of the fact that I'm not really familiar with the traditional notation or methodologies that revolve around it. The score of Treatise was one of many examples in avant-garde music or contemporary music that had radically different, unconventional, indeterminate ways of score writing. The coexistence of almost obsessive constructivism evident in geometrical aesthetics of the score and the radical freedom in interpretation that it demands was incredibly captivating. I wondered if I could derive something of my own from this work in listening. The majority of the literature on Treatise discuss the score writing, not much out there on how people play them, how it sounds. Nonetheless, there are numerous available recordings of Treatise. I selected 5 of them and started planning to have a listening session. I'll sit in this room alone, listen to the recordings of Treatise. I'll write down notes while listening, nearly an automatism, a usual habit of mine when I listen in concentration. Thanks to my tendency of getting distracted all the time, these notes often become largely unrelated to the music I'm listening to. I want to encourage it this time. Have the music be a prompt for these off-topic thoughts. I write them down. And for each writing done from each recording, I'll compose a miniature musical piece derived from the writing. So, signs to sounds, and vice versa. Vice versa. I'll document everything, every process, thinking, writing, composing, but mostly listening. The first recording I listened to is by Quax Ensemble, directed by Petr Kotik, who's also playing flute, Josef Vejvoda on percussion, Václav Zaradnik on the piano, Pavel Kondelik on tenor saxophone. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but Quax Ensemble is an incredibly short-lived avant-garde music ensemble in Prague. The birth of this ensemble itself is quite related to this, I think. I read that the emergence of this ensemble derived from their performance of Treatise, in fact. This was recorded in 1967, which is the year that Cornelius Cardew published the Treatise. So it is a historical recording. It was recorded live in Prague, but it was only decades after, in 2009, that it was released by Mode Records in the USA. I'm quite familiar with the beginning. I listened to it several times. It starts slow, quiet, almost pointillistically, and they seem to be emphasizing strong integrity in their collective performance. No sound wasted. Surprised to discover such an economic approach from an improvisatory work like Treatise. They do create a particular grammar, often sounding completely structuralist. I tend to feel resistant to any imposition or even guidance on how one shall listen. I realize that how one listens varies so fundamentally that gathering around a grass field to lie down, do a little bit of meditation wouldn't provide any unity in listening anyway. I believe as one encounters and listens to more and more time-based art, the way one listens also elaborates and becomes truly theirs, perhaps. In that sense, this indeterminacy should be respected. An autonomy of listening. After listening and writing, I started composing as planned, based on the notes I wrote. These compositions are to form the film's soundtrack. Funny then to think that many of the compositions will appear before the scene of me composing, as the images will be chronological, yet the soundtrack not. Johann Sebastian Bach, Goldberg Variations, Variation 16. I'm fond of this genre of Western art music, variations, also Beethoven's Diabelli Variations and Rossesky's People United Will Never Be Defeated are all wonderful pieces. I had to exclaim the latter title because it has an exclamation mark at the end. Next is a live recording by Keith Rowe and Oren Ambachi, released in 2009 via Planum. Keith Rowe is a founding member of AMM, an improvised music ensemble from the UK, alongside Cornelius Cardew himself. A respected musician, I am familiar with his works as guitarist, whereas Oren Ambachi is a new name for me. Upon research, I learned that he is an Australian multi-instrumentalist and has made collaborations with Rowe prior to this recording. Electroacoustic principles, intriguing sounds, quite left alone as well, lengthy, slow and repetitive. I hear some remnants of constructivism again. Would it be safe to assume that it's the score that mediates such forms? Can't tell yet. After all, I am hardly ready ever to claim anything. My issue with found object sounds is mostly in their definable nature, noticeably unmusical but familiar sounds, largely unvaried as well. Under musical context, I tend to manipulate such object sounds to a degree where most connotation or familiarity of the sound source are diminished. This is usually quite an obsessive process, as if I'm Lady Macbeth washing the blood away from my hands. This connotation of sounds, however, is something that I find conceptually very interesting. But as music in fixed media form, I feel it tends to be quite derivative. This album is a solo interpretation by Noel Akshote, a phenomenal guitarist active in free avant-garde, improvisation, and jazz. Each track title indicates the selected page of Treatise that he plays. Page 2, 7, 14, 153, and so on. But as nothing determines anything in the score, it is rather meaningless to refer to the exact page to find the exact correspondence. It only exists in the player's head. Each page is about 2 to 4 minutes long, moderately fast rhythm, manifests virtuosity, sensational how he plays, always a moment of wonder to witness the skillful playing of an instrument. The repetition of certain gestures creates themes. Again, clear formality. Each page incredibly coherent. With my imagination, it's hard to associate this music to signs and score of Treatise. That I find exciting. Solo interpretation of Treatise is rather scarce. The score feels, to me at least, to be indicating polyphony of some kind in most pages. I haven't found a solo recording of a monophonic instrument of Treatise yet. Wonder how that would be. The next recording is a project led by Art Lange or Lange or Lange or Lange that gathered several renowned musicians, including well-known Jim O'Rourke. It was released by Hot Hot Records. I like their albums in general. This album I have also listened to multiple times already. It is lengthy, so it's going to be a good opportunity to sit through all of it. Art Lange, conductor, producer, Jim Baker on the piano and electronics, Carrie Biolo on vibraphone and percussion, Guillermo Gregorio, clarinet, alto saxophone, Fred Lundberg-Holm, cello and electronics, Jim Oruk, electronics. This project was financially assisted by UBS, it seems. Interesting. Again, a strong sense of formalism. Come to think of it, the presence of a director or conductor could have created this constructivism even clearer, just like in the case of Gokseong-sangbo. The players seem almost reluctant to disturb other gestures, but when the interactions do occur, they sound quite organic. This is not the exact kind of juxtaposition that I prefer in music, but it's quite pleasant nonetheless. I affirm the act or mode of disliking. It is when I started to dislike a piece of music, a painting, or a film that I truly formed a distinctive world. I believe this is relevant to anyone who concerns art. On the contrary, in many ways, it is indeed the mode of love that has caused this brutal reality one lives in. I would prefer not to elaborate. The fifth and the last one that I'll listen to tonight, or today because it is morning already, is an unusual harsh noise version by Nicolas Horvat, an acclaimed pianist who also composes electroacoustic music. Assuming this is a performance of electronics alone, it makes this the only album in the catalog that I researched that performed Treatise with solo electronics. I must say I have certain prejudices to harsh noise music. Often I find them repetitive and predictable. Yet this is clearly a generalization. If I can consider pieces like Persepolis by Xenakis a harsh noise music, for instance, then I'd be a huge fan. I am really curious. I saved the opportunity of listening to this recording for the filming so that I can listen to it in such a serious setting. It might be special. It is extremely loud. I am really sensitive to loudness. High amplitude terrifies me, which in fact makes music like this special for me, as I generally avoid them. This music is surprisingly formal, presents lots of different thematic possibilities within this particular approach. Chamber music feeling. It's not at all the typical massive orchestration of noises. It's sharp and strongly grammatical, yet it feels destructive to the grammar at the same time, sheerly due to the intensity of the sounds. It's intriguing. It's rare to find a coexistence like this. I'm wondering if the loudness will change. Since it's rather committed to the genre aesthetic of harsh noise, it could be an interesting limitation. Silence is scarce, but because of that, they are incredibly impactful. An idea for a piece. I've had this for a while. A performance titled Beheaded. On stage, I will put myself under a table and show only my head to the outside. It's from the fact that I absolutely despise my own body. I thought if this cycle of sentiments were to be extremely accelerated, I might end up claiming I don't need any organs other than the brain. The only organ that matters.